Superman has been corrupted by red kryptonite, and now the most powerful hero on Earth is on the verge of collapse. But the real end is about to begin, because Doomsday is back, and with him, a new crisis that threatens the entire multiverse. I'm Andrew the Geek Master, and in today's video, we'll break down everything that happened in Superman number 27, which wraps up the Superman Red arc and sets the stage for the next major DC crossover involving Darkseid's absolute universe. To not miss stories like this one, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and let's get started. The chapter begins at the Daily Planet, where Lois Lane surprised her colleagues by returning to the newsroom, now without the powers that once tied her to the superhero life. Some were shocked, certain she wouldn't be able to resist the urge to chase big stories again. But the truth ran deeper. Her brief experience with powers had changed the way she saw the world and herself. She could no longer approach the job the way she used to. Still, reuniting with Jimmy Olsen brought her some relief, since he was finally out of the hospital. Lois was visibly happy to see him doing well, especially because Jimmy had been seriously injured after she sent him to photograph Superwoman, who was, in fact, Lois herself, still keeping that secret from her friend. That's why she got tense when Siobhan Smythe, Jimmy's girlfriend, suddenly said that the person responsible for nearly killing Jimmy was Superwoman. Lois did carry the guilt, fully aware that she had underestimated the effects of her powers. Still, Jimmy didn't blame her. He made it clear that the accident was the result of his own choices. Siobhan, on the other hand, promised not to lash out if Superwoman ever reappeared, though her expression hinted that the promise might be a fragile one. The truth is, Lois was eager to talk privately with Jimmy and explain everything that had happened. But at that moment, one of the Daily Planet's reporters burst in to announce that a massive breakout was taking place at Stryker's Island Penitentiary, where Lex was being held. And right then, Superman, corrupted by red kryptonite, was in combat with the heroine Marilyn Moonlight, who was trying to stop him to protect the city. During the fight, Superman briefly regained his clarity and asked Marilyn to follow him. Yes, instead of fighting her, he led her to an isolated wing of the prison, where it was revealed that Farm and Graft, the mad scientists who had infected Superman with red kryptonite radiation, had simply escaped. And not just them. Lex Luthor himself was no longer there. Marilyn Moonlight said she'd deal with Lex later. As the protector of Metropolis, she knew the biggest threat to the city at that moment was Superman himself, who had been growing increasingly unstable. Clark, however, suspected something bigger was at play. He believed her presence there wasn't a coincidence and suggested that Lex Luthor might be orchestrating her movements. So if Marilyn really wanted to stop Superman, they would need to find Lex. While Superman and Marilyn Moonlight tried to figure out Lex's whereabouts, at Supercorp, Mercy Graves was closely monitoring the spikes of red kryptonite energy in Superman. She detected an unusual fluctuation in the pattern. Something had briefly calmed him. But before she could investigate further, someone appeared in the lab, making Mercy question how anyone could have gotten past her security. She said she'd show no mercy to such a person, but she was completely thrown off when she saw none other than Lex Luthor. Lex said he had to see her, which made Mercy think he'd come to kill her out of revenge. But Lex hadn't returned to confront her. He had come to offer her a choice. Lex told her he understood why she had gone ahead with Project XL, even without his authorization. She had wanted things to go back to how they used to be, but according to Lex, he would never go back to being the man he once was. That's why he told her she could now choose: stay with Supercorp and lead it alone, or leave with him and start over. Yes, Lex, the one who had always been in control, was now the one asking for a second chance, while Mercy held the power to decide. Meanwhile, Superman and Marilyn were heading toward Metropolis, with the woman warning that she wouldn't hesitate if the Man of Steel lost control again. Along the way, They reflected on Lex's plans and his connection to Moonlight. Superman believed it wasn't about emotional manipulation, but rather some sort of tech Lex had developed to control Marilyn's movements. His goal was to get answers directly from Lex once they found him. But Graft and Farm didn't give them that chance. Commanding a giant robot built from Supercorp's nanotechnology and bearing Superman's symbol on its chest, they began destroying Metropolis. This wasn't just a physical attack, it was symbolic. The emblem that was meant to represent hope now spread terror. This kind of distortion had been happening more and more. Weapons branded with Superman's logo, used by both allies and villains, had been spotted across the galaxy. It was a deliberate attempt to tarnish everything the symbol stood for. Of course, Superman immediately recognized the material used in the robot, the same nanotech that formed the metallic S on top of the Supercorp building. That led him to realize that brute force alone wouldn't be enough. He had to fight back with something equally powerful. Then suddenly, in the middle of the battle, Lex started speaking to Superman, knowing Clark would hear him through his super hearing. Lex explained the situation. Graft and Farm had been released by him as part of a deal. They had promised to cure Superman of the red kryptonite, but they had lied. However, Lex had his own cure, and he had already sent it to the hero. It wasn't immediately clear what this cure was, but all signs pointed to Marilyn Moonlight. From the very beginning, her presence had stabilized Superman. It's true that Lex never said this directly, but he hinted that the hero already knew enough to figure it out on his own. Lex Luthor made it clear he had intentionally released Graft and Farm. He needed a distraction, something big enough to keep Superman busy while he carried out an even bigger plan. But it wasn't something evil. Faced with the threat of the mad scientists, Lex explained that the only way to destroy the giant robot was to strike its structure with another object made from the same nanotechnology. That's when Superman understood what needed to be done. Without hesitation, he flew to the top of Supercorp, ripped the giant metallic S off the building, and raised it as a weapon. It was a symbolic scene. The very symbol, now corrupted, would be the key to restoring his integrity. Lex also used this moment to make a confession. He said that from the start of Supercorp, his plan was to manipulate Superman into trusting him. But over time, the lie began to turn into truth. Lex admitted that working with Superman had made Metropolis, and even the world, a better place. Still, he acknowledged that the man he used to be couldn't coexist with what he was trying to build. That's why he had to leave. And this is where he says goodbye to the Man of Steel. With that, Superman hurled the massive metallic symbol at the robot, destroying the machine for good. Then he turned to Marilyn Moonlight and, without saying much, asked her to unleash her lunar power on him. And she understood. Without hesitation, she granted his request. The energy emitted by Moonlight surged through Clark's body, eliminating the remnants of red kryptonite from his bloodstream. Then something surprising happened. Lex's plan apparently went even further, because not only was Superman cured, but Marilyn was too. For the first time, she didn't vanish at sunrise. The cycle that had kept her from existing during the day seemed to have been broken. However, even though he was healed, Superman still carried frustration. As soon as he recovered, he flew straight to Mercy Graves looking for answers, wanting to know where Lex had gone. Mercy, however, didn't know. She said only that he had offered her the chance to leave with him, but she had refused. Lex was alone now. That's why Mercy told Superman to go home, and added that she had learned from Lex to always be available whenever Superman needed her. A little later, Clark returned to the rooftop of the Daily Planet, where he found Lois watching over the city. This is where she confessed that she wished she could have flown to help him at Stryker's Island, but she knew she couldn't do that anymore. So Clark took her for a flight over the city. And during the flight, they talked openly about the powers Lois had lost. She revealed that, despite everything, she was okay with it. She no longer needed to be a superhero. She was happy simply being Lois Lane, the editor of the Daily Planet. After all, if she ever wanted to fly again, she knew a guy. While flying, the couple noticed that something had changed. Supercorp was once again called LexCorp. Lois was already aware because the company's PR team had visited the Daily Planet to officially announce that Mercy Graves was the new CEO. More troubling was the fact that the company still held on to the technology developed during the Supercorp era, and their lawyers refused to return it, even under legal and ethical scrutiny. Lois raised concerns about Lex's vaults and the whereabouts of his creations. In theory, Clark should have been able to locate them easily, but strangely, he couldn't detect anything. The reason would soon become clear. Lex had relocated to a remote, snow-covered town where the entire population communicated exclusively through sign language, which meant Superman couldn't hear anything. No voices, no noise, not even a heartbeat. To wrap things up, we get an epilogue set in the future, once again linking the main DC universe with the new Absolute Universe. In a distant future, the Omega Legion was holding the Time Trapper prisoner and bringing him to meet Booster Gold, who had also been held captive since the beginning of this new DC phase and was now a key figure in the temporal collapse of the universe. That's because, according to Saturn Girl, Booster Gold had absorbed Omega energy after crossing the temporal rift, which now made him one of the most important beings in all existence. This revelation angered the Time Trapper, who believed that kind of information was dangerous to share. The Legion had no fear of the Time Trapper, but the being inside that armor held much more than they realized. He was also Doomsday, a force of destruction still not fully understood. With a single act of pure brutality, he broke free from the restraints that Cosmic Boy thought were unbreakable, and before striking at his captors, he declared that he needed to find the World Forger. For those who don't know, the World Forger is none other than the firstborn of Perpetua, and the older brother of the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor. After that, the Time Trapper stepped through a portal and vanished from the Legion's sight. Cosmic Boy and Lightning Lad wondered what they were supposed to do next, but Saturn Girl, on the other hand, wasn't surprised. Instead, she said the time had finally come to meet Superman.